Hi, everybody. I'm Nolan Hoffman. Thanks for joining us tonight with East Texas in Focus. Let's get started with our topic. Tonight, we're focusing on the continued war for water in East Texas. Recently, a federal lawsuit was filed against a local groundwater conservation district. The lawsuit comes from a Dallas area company that is attempting to install dozens of high-capacity water wells in our area that would extract billions of gallons of water from the Carrizo-Wilcox aquifer, most of them in Anderson County. Redtown Ranch Holding and Pine Bliss, companies owned by Dallas millionaire and venture capitalist Kyle Bass, suing the Groundwater Conservation District for their alleged deliberate scheme to stop the company from drilling beneath the land they own. Bass says he hasn't been treated fairly by the district despite following its rules for years. He is also seeking an undisclosed amount of compensation. We begin tonight with Ashlyn Anderson. She has reaction from Bass as well as East Texans who believe our water sources could be at risk.
We'll have the exact same outcome we've had in all the other lawsuits he's filed. He loses.
The fight for East Texas water rights continue.
He hasn't won one yet.
On Tuesday, Dallas investor Kyle Bass filed a 27-page complaint against the Neches and Trinity Valley's Groundwater Conservation District, suing for access to drill in Anderson County.
It's about money, and him suing the directors individually and alleging some sort of crazy conspiracy just shows how desperate he is.
Bass owns two companies that sit on nearly 12,000 acres in Anderson and Henderson counties. Last year, Bass applied to drill 21 high-capacity water wells that could potentially take 10 billion gallons of water a year from the Carrizo-Wilcox aquifer.
The state, at the State Water Development Board, says there's 170 million acre feet in Anderson County in the aquifer. I'm asking for less than 1/10 of 1% of the water.
In the lawsuit, Bass targets a 5-month moratorium by the Conservation District that temporarily blocks the processing and permitting of non-exempt drilling in the area.
It shows that he doesn't really care about East Texas, in my opinion.
Kyle Bass tells Fox 51 News he believes the district has put up a targeted and indefinite roadblock, adding in part, "My lawsuit is about protecting the property rights of all Texas landowners and making clear that government regulators cannot simply change the rules to pick winners and losers."
Anybody that's considering a large multi-million-dollar project is not harmed by a 3 to 4 month wait.
Dick Swift, president of the Citizens for Local East Texas Aquifer Rights, calls on the state of Texas to recognize the decreasing amount of water to keep Texans alive.
We can't just keep inviting industry after industry after industry, especially data centers, to Texas with no thought of how much water they're going to need and use and where it's going to come from.
The Neches and Trinity Valley's Groundwater Conservation District did not choose to comment on the lawsuit.
Again, it was Ashlyn Anderson with that report. State Representative Cody Harris from Palestine represents the area where Bass and his companies want to extract water from. Harris says he believes the company's ultimate goal with this lawsuit and several state-level filings is to drive the conservation district into bankruptcy. We spoke to him recently about this fight and the most effective way East Texans can also join the fight. Some Dallas area companies now who are attempting to install dozens of high-capacity water wells here in East Texas. They've now sued the Neches and Trinity Valley's Groundwater District for their, quote, deliberate scheme to allegedly stop the company from drilling. Your reaction to when you saw the news yesterday, I know you were kind of passionate, really passionate on social media with your statement.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a surprise. We kind of knew this was going to be the game plan from the get-go, is to sue the Groundwater Conservation District into compliance or out of existence so that they can just do whatever they want to do and take as much water as they want to take. And so, you know, I completely disagree with the whole premise. What the Groundwater Conservation District is doing now by updating their rules, they're required to do that on a regular basis to make sure that they achieve their desired future conditions. That's in state law. So the argument that they're doing this specifically to exclude Pine Bliss or Redtown Ranch or anything like that is just completely unfounded.
And so the company's in a lawsuit allegedly tied to Dallas-based investor Kyle Bass, who said in a statement to us, he said, quote, "The district has put up a targeted and indefinite roadblock that prevents us from accessing or even testing the groundwater beneath our own land." So you do think the district acted within its legal authority?
Without question. Absolutely. You know, part of what we've discovered in the interim hearings that I've conducted in the Natural Resources Committee is that we don't have accurate data on our groundwater. And that's part of what the GCD, the Neches Trinity Valley's GCD, has been going through, along with other GCDs throughout the state, along with the Water Development Board, and making sure that they have the rules in place to effectively manage our groundwater to achieve the desired future conditions that are set by GMA 11. I mean, there's this whole process, and the rulemaking is part of that whole process. There's nobody that is targeted in the rules. It's all about making sure that we effectively manage our groundwater for everyone in the district.
What do you feel Bass's ultimate goal is here?
I think his ultimate goal is to drive the GCD into bankruptcy. I mean, he's got two state-level lawsuits that apparently he doesn't like how those are going. Those are currently sitting in the 12th Court of Appeals here in Tyler, where the parties are making their arguments. And now all of a sudden he files a federal lawsuit. And you know, we've seen this playbook before with other companies who just try to outspend a GCD. And so I think that's exactly what's going on right now. These lawsuits are incredibly expensive, and a groundwater conservation district doesn't have the resources on a regular ongoing basis to fight a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. And so really it's going to take all of us in East Texas to pitch in. You know, on my Facebook post yesterday, the majority of the comments were, what can I do to help in this fight? So what we can do to help in this fight is whether you have $5 or $10 or $1 million to donate to this cause, contributing either directly to the Neches and Trinity Valley's Groundwater Conservation District or to a local nonprofit organization called Citizens for Local East Texas Aquifer Rights, CLEAR, and they have a Facebook page you can go to. It's a nonprofit. But to put my money where my mouth is, today I'm going to write a check of $25,000 and donate it directly to the Neches and Trinity Valley's Groundwater Conservation District to help in this fight. I mean, literally, it is going to take all of us engaging and digging deep and locking our arms together to make sure that we can outlast him.
On that, they're also seeking compensation right now. If they would win this federal lawsuit, what precedent could that set for other large-scale groundwater projects across East Texas in the near future?
Basically, what it would do is if he were successful on this is make the state law completely null and void. I mean, that's what we're dealing with. That's why I think the court should immediately dismiss this case, is because this is a state issue. This is not a federal issue. For decades now, we have had groundwater conservation districts in place, part of Chapter 36 of the Texas Water Code, and their specific job is to manage the groundwater for the next generations to come, make sure there's enough groundwater there and that everybody has a right to access that. So the idea that he is having his water taken from him is just ridiculous. He's going to get access to his water that's underneath the land, but it's going to be subject to whatever the new rules that the GCD adopts, just like everybody else in the district.
I'm sure you've answered this many times before, but I wanted to get you just on the record here again. Where do you think private property rights end and protecting a shared aquifer begins? And I'm guessing this is a question that's going to come up next year in Austin, early next year, right?
That's right. And that's a fantastic question because understanding water law is very complex. So we have to split it between surface water and groundwater, the water that's below the surface. Surface water, water coming through the creeks, your lakes, everything on top, is technically owned by the state of Texas. That's not a private property right. The water that's underneath your land, that is a private property right, protected in state law. And the problem is that there are no fences under the ground like you have on the surface. So there's nothing there to keep your neighbor from sinking a huge well and draining the water that is your private property out from underneath you. So that's why the legislature created groundwater conservation districts, to put some guardrails in place. That's the most effective thing we have right now until the legislature decides that it's time to modify or change the rule of capture. But I do want to be very clear that I don't think that groundwater should ever be changed from a private property right. Absolutely. The groundwater that's underneath your land is yours. but your neighbor should not have the right to come and steal that out from underneath you, just like Kyle Bass is trying to do from everyone in Henderson and Anderson counties and Houston County that has no groundwater conservation district. That's what we're trying to protect, is everybody else from corporate greed, basically. Greedy people who are trying to steal that private property out from underneath somebody else.
So there's been a lot of back and forth news stories with this last couple of years. This isn't the first story I believe we've done about Kyle Bass. Have you ever tried to talk to him? What's the communication been like between you two? Maybe you haven't. I just wanted to ask that question.
Well, we've had very limited interaction. The one face-to-face that we had was during my hearing in Natural Resources last July, so a year ago, when we had this 11-hour-long hearing and Mr. Bass came down with his whole legal team and we tried to dig into it. We had some pretty frank back and forth, and then fast forward a couple of months when we got to special session, and through my relationship with the governor and him being from East Texas, understanding what we're facing here, he agreed to put this issue, this local issue, on the special session call. And so as soon as that happened, Mr. Bass tweeted really late at night that some small-time Texas politician, which is what he was referring to me, was kind of out over my skis. I can't remember exactly what he said, but that I was in over my head and he was going to file a federal takings claim. Then about 9 o'clock that next morning, that tweet had been deleted. But that's the only communication we've had between each other since then.
And then on that note, have you spoken with the Groundwater District about this lawsuit since yesterday at all? People close to them, is there any reactions from them? They didn't comment to us about the lawsuit yesterday.
No, I want to respect the boundaries there. You know, my role is legislative, and it's not to get into the weeds. But at the same time, these people are from our community. They're people that are on the Groundwater Conservation District board. So, you know, when we run into each other at a restaurant or in town, sure, we'll have a visit. But I've been very careful to respect their role versus my role. And I've made it clear that I support them in what they're trying to do to make sure that they've got accurate rules in place for all groundwater rights owners throughout the region inside the district. And now I hope that they understand how much more I support them in continuing to do what's right and with the contribution that I'm going to make to them today.
People in East Texas here who are seeing this lawsuit, who might be concerned, what can they expect with this lawsuit? Is there how long? My question is, how long might something like this go on? I know the courts can be complicated.
Yeah, I think if the court looks at the simple facts and sees that we already have 2 existing state lawsuits going on that address this issue or specifically about this issue. It's a state law issue. My hope is that this federal court case doesn't last very long at all and gets thrown out. But when we've seen this happen in other parts of the state, a federal takings claim, if the court decides that it does have jurisdiction and is going to hear this case, then it could be years before we see any finality to it.
All right, that's a good start. When we come back with East Texas in Focus, much more with State Representative Harris about the fight to protect our groundwater. We'll be right back. Welcome back here. We're focusing tonight on protecting East Texas water. The fight to conserve our water does not only stop with people and companies trying to take the water away from our area. The booming data center industry and now also threatening to take our natural resources. And State Representative Cody Harris is the chair of the State House Committee on Natural Resources. We spoke with him a few weeks ago about what lawmakers are doing in Austin to protect our resources. During this most recent conversation, we were able to also ask him for an update on that topic and what's still ahead.
So one of the things that came out of that hearing that you and I talked about was the limited response from data centers to both the Texas Water Development Board and the Public Utility Commission, the PUC. We had way too few data centers who answered a survey about their data usage or their water usage. And so just over the last few days, the PUC has reopened that survey. to try to get more of a response in from the data center industries. And I sent out a message yesterday when I found out about it that now is the time for the data center industry to answer the call, because we are going to have a response next session. When the legislature meets in January, we're going to put guardrails around data centers. We're going to make sure that they don't have the option of whether or not to tell us how much water they're using. We're going to make sure they don't have the option to not use a closed loop system or something even more efficient than that. And, you know, I think we should encourage them to use produced water from the oil and gas industry, water that's wastewater right now, that you can't do anything else with. This is the perfect application if they're coming. So that's the newest development since then. You know, we did have Governor Abbott here in Bullard last week. He made some comments to that effect as well, saying that he doesn't believe that data centers should be located in rural neighborhoods. And we're seeing that specifically at Cedar Creek Lake up in Henderson County, where the same data center who refused to come testify in my committee is trying to build right next to a residential subdivision on Cedar Creek Lake. So, you know, there's a lot that the data center industry can do to quit shooting themselves in their own foot by just being good neighbors and being transparent. And I think it's time for them to start acting that way.
And then one of my final questions for Cody. So obviously there seems to be mostly concerning opinions about data centers right now, definitely in East Texas, with companies wanting to move in here. With those recent hearings that you took part in, everything you learned, especially the last couple of weeks there in Austin, is there any misconceptions that people might have about data centers going around the internet? Maybe what they've heard from other people, regardless if you're for them or if you're against them, that you kind of want people to know?
Yeah, so one of the primary things is that there are a lot of data center developers out there who are trying to, what I say is get to the dance. They're trying to find the access to the electricity, to water, get whatever permitting is needed to come into their local city or county. And then they try to go attract a data center client like Meta or Google or any number of the actual users of the data center to come in and be their customer. And so while we may see 8 to 10 in a county saying they're coming, the reality is a fraction of those are actually ever going to get built. So while it would be terrifying if all of them got built, that would be a strain on all of our infrastructure, our resources, all that. But the reality is they're not going to get built. It's going to be a small percentage of that. So not to say that people shouldn't be vigilant and the people of East Texas shouldn't be concerned. Because I think it's right that they are, especially when the data center industry is being so, having such a lack of transparency and telling us where they're getting their water from. Why would you not want to tell us that? So, you know, I think we as Texans, we're really good at solving challenges and getting through challenging things together to benefit future generations of Texans. And I think that same thing will happen with this particular issue as well.
And then I think my final question, I'm thinking if I have anything else for you. We also spoke yesterday to East Texans who don't believe Kyle Bass will win this federal lawsuit. Do you think he has a chance to possibly win?
I'll say this. I think the law is on our side. The law is on the side of the Groundwater Conservation District and the people of East Texas. Bass's main strategy, I believe, is going to be to bankrupt the Groundwater Conservation District and to draw this out and make it so expensive that we can't afford to continue in the fight. If that happens, then the Groundwater Conservation District ceases to exist, and there are no protections in place for anyone else for the aquifer that's there, and rule of capture would apply on its face. I think that's Mr. Bass's ultimate goal. And so that's why I think it's critical that we as East Texans dig deep and engage and contribute whatever we can to this fight. And that's why I'm doing everything that I can and donating $25,000 today to the Neches Trinity Valley Groundwater Conservation District to make sure that we can stay in this fight. But even what I'm doing is a fraction of what it's going to cost in the long run to fight a federal lawsuit of this nature.
All right, and when we come back, aquifers across East Texas are reaching critically low levels. What's being done to protect their water for the future? That's all next. Welcome back. In the race to protect our precious East Texas resources intensifies as state aquifers drop to concerning water levels. Now many landowners, farmers, lawmakers are asking one simple question: where do we exactly draw the line at? Ella Mitchell has why some fear water millions depend on could be running out faster than it's being replaced.
Our aquifers are in pretty bad shape right now. Yeah.
Texas has 9 major aquifers, providing the majority of our state's drinking water and fueling municipalities' water supply. But these aquifers are struggling as large corporations and individuals try to drain the resources.
I don't think that any one entity should be able to capture all of the groundwater allotted to an entire aquifer for 2 whole counties.
To put this into perspective, the Trinity aquifer, spanning from southwest Texas into parts of eastern Oklahoma, has lowered hundreds of feet, including 50 feet in regions trickling into East Texas.
They're pumping our water all the way into Dallas. And so what happens with that, if we can't do our crops, we can't do anything else like here. So, you see the green trees around here? Think about if there's no water.
The issue affects everyone, especially farmers and ranchers in Henderson and Anderson counties, where just under 3,000 farms are included in the proposed pumping areas, making landowners' fears of having water drained off their land more of a reality.
Or they're doing inspections and you're reporting, I have to lower my pump, my well is dry, my well is dry, my well is dry, my well is dry.
However, the potential for dry wells hasn't just been at the forefront of farmers and ranchers' minds. It's also caught the attention of lawmakers.
So before any project is considered, we have to make sure they're not using that water that we need. That's obviously got to be step one.
With all eyes turned to our state leaders to keep our wells flowing.
He just needs to lead the way.
All right, that was Ella Mitchell with that report. Coming up after the break here, closing thoughts on this week's topic. We'll be right back. As we discussed tonight, this isn't just about one lawsuit or one landowner. It's about resources everybody depends on. The water beneath East Texas helps supply our homes, our farms, our businesses, and the future generations. The decisions being made today could have an impact for decades to come. That's why it's important to stay informed, ask questions, and make your voice heard. Whether you support the Groundwater District's position or believe changes are needed, public participation certainly matters. Many of these ideas will also come head-to-head as lawmakers return back to Austin in January for the 90th Texas legislative session. All right, that's going to be it for tonight. But next week, of course, we're going to zero in on more issues here in East Texas, of course, with East Texas in Focus. Have a great night, everybody.